Hey, hey. Welcome to Campfire. We are back with a podcast that we are having a lot of fun with and loving because we get to have conversations with people that are in the classroom every day, with teachers who go through some of their practical implementations of how they're utilizing technology in the classroom in effective ways, how they're kind of utilizing blended learning. We get to chat with people about new tech tools or something that we're currently digging, and we answer your questions. Should you have questions for us about blended learning or just tech integration in education in general? So now for a little bit about us. Jeff, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Gerlach. I'm an instructional design coach with Michigan Virtual University. And I just learned about the empowerment of the Wonder Woman pose. And Aaron taught me that. And I'm feeling like really energized, Aaron, like beyond energized. Plus, I got some coffee, so I'm jumping off the screens right now.
Awesome. So afternoon coffee plus Wonder Woman. This is going to be a dangerous recording. I already love it. That's awesome. Well, a little bit about me. I'm Erin Lukart. I'm also a blended learning coach. I just explained to Jeff what a Wonder Woman pose was, and we will definitely throw a link to that TED Talk. And there's got to be an article out there too about what exactly a Wonder Woman pose is, but I'm a true believer that it does boost your confidence and your energy.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Well, other than the fact that we're digging the Wonder Woman pose, what else are we digging this week?
Big old drum roll. Yes, actual drum roll from the other side. Mine's more plasticky. What we're digging this week is Actively Learn. And Actively Learn is a web app, and it's a really robust utility to help you out with informational text and getting students to interact with informational text. They've got a vast catalog of informational readings to search through. A lot of them, when I was looking through it, tended to be news articles and things like that. But I'm also a social studies teacher, so that's where my eye was drawn towards, like current event kind of things, but also primary documents and things of that nature. It has a lot of that stuff. You can also add your own documents if they are not included in the catalog. It'll take PDFs. It'll take Google Docs. It will take a URL to a website that it doesn't happen to have in its catalog. And so it's really great for bringing in the informational text that you want students to interact with. Word of warning, when you have to upload your own, it limits you to 3 a month. So you have to think tactically about how you might utilize those 3 uploads if you find yourself uploading a lot of your own stuff. Otherwise, behind the other side of the paywall, Aaron, there's always a plethora of other options that take those limitations off of you if you're willing to put some dollar behind it. I think where its real strength is in the annotations and questions that teachers can add in and make this reading experience for students an interactive one. So, for example, with annotations, you can use it to add additional context for the reader by way of textual explanation, or you can even attach external media like a YouTube stream of Tippy Canoe and Tyler 2 when you're, because social studies, right? Like
Obviously.
if you're talking about William Henry Harrison and you want to bring in that music that went along with his campaign, you can do that in one space. So when we're talking about digital literacy skills, something that gets me really excited is when everything is in one place, right? And students can intuitively go through these materials that you've provided for them within context of one reading. So that's really cool to make some of these informational texts come to life with external media and stuff like that. By far, I really, really enjoy the question option, though. because it can be added in, again, within the context of reading, right at the end of a paragraph. Just drop it right into the reading, and boom, there's a question for them. So there's active engagement right at the point of learning something. So you read through, you're learning something for the first time, you get hit with a question at the end of the paragraph, and right away, like, it's quick proximity. And while that thinking's hot in that student's mind, let's capitalize on it with an active reading strategy there. Students can't move on in the reading until they interact with those questions, though. So consider that. If you want them to be able to float around through the whole document, you might want to put a question in as an annotation. Students can reply to those annotations, so you can even facilitate a conversation within the document with all of your students. You can attach Common Core standards to any of the objects that you put in there. There's like a dyslexic feature in there where it sets it up well for students with dyslexia.
Easy for you to say.
Easy for me to say, right? No, it's a really cool tool. And on the student side of things, students can highlight any word and have it pronounced or defined for them. So I was really excited to see that, and then even more so excited to see that the most researched words are recorded and communicated through the teacher dashboard. So if you've got a lot of students highlighting and defining what external, because external is a word that's right on my screen right now, is it can kind of start to call out what's at the leading edge of the student's understanding. Maybe they don't know what external means, and it's critical to understanding the passage. And so, looking those words up is either enabling them to move forward and they're learning that, or maybe it's a sticking point that you want to take a look at as a teacher. So Aaron, you and I both are real big advocates of the importance of formative data, and not only gathering it, but acting upon it. And I think Actively Learn does a really good job to communicate what students are experiencing as they're going through these interactives that you can set up for them.
Absolutely. And I think like you said, it's such a cool way to provide kind of like link outs, but in one place to share a little bit more about, well, what's going on, especially when we think about primary sources. And we're talking early American history, something that we both taught, or even, any types of world history where students just need a little bit more context. And then by providing a little bit more background knowledge or providing that context, they can understand that much more, or have that additional association to, oh, that's what he was talking about here. So I think that's really powerful too.
Yep. Good tool. Check it out. I mean, really, as any teacher right now, every teacher is a literacy teacher, right? So
Absolutely.
Thinking about how, if you're a science teacher, get in there, look at the science articles, see how it's laid out. Something that's really nice is when you sign up for an account, it immediately throws you into to an Actively Learn tour or document. I don't know exactly what they call it, a lesson, an activity, and lets you experience it from the student end. So if that stuff sounds like it's something that you can grab onto, check it out. We'll have it in a link in the show notes, or you can just do a good old-fashioned Google search and let us know what you think about it.
Absolutely. Okay. We are so excited for our guest today. Our guest is Sandy Freeland. She is a third grade teacher in McBain, Michigan, which is kind of a rural town outside of Cadillac. And Sandy is just so passionate about teaching. She's passionate about technology. In fact, so much so that she's coming to us on her first day of Christmas break, and she's taking some time to sit down and share the amazing things that she's doing in her classroom with technology. Sandy, how's it going? First day of Christmas break.
Yes. It's going so much better than it was yesterday.
I saw your post about waking up without an alarm. Was it blissful?
Oh my goodness. It was amazing.
We have this new thing where my 2-year-old, who used to sleep till 9 a.m., is like up at 5 and wants nothing to do with going back to bed.
Oh, no.
So
Oh, no.
we have our own alarm. We don't even have to set it.
Exactly. Is she helping you work out in the mornings now?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yes.
Usually she runs back upstairs. She's like, I get my workout shoes.
That's awesome.
So, Sandy, we want to thank you for waking up and taking time out of your first day of break. Hopefully you're feeling kind of ready for Christmas, and we hope that your mindset is relaxed, but you still have a little bit of kind of school on your brain. We don't want to make you dive too deeply back into that just yet, though.
Oh, yes. Oh, it's still fresh. It's very fresh.
But we would love, I know you pretty well through my open book and just kind of like the tech circles that we keep running into each other in. But we would love for you to share a little bit about what's going on in your classroom, or what's going on in your camp, if you will.
Yeah, sure. We are one-to-one iPads in my classroom. Our school is K4 one-to-one iPads, and then 512 MacBooks. And so I'm our district tech integration coach. And so I help our entire building, because we're a K-12 building, I help our entire building staff with anything that they need to integrate technology into their classrooms. But in my classroom, we just finished working on an animal, we're in animals and science, vertebrates and invertebrates. We just finished working on putting together a book with Book Creator on vertebrates and invertebrates. And we used pictures from Pixabay, and we put those in there and classified them in each group that they belonged in. And the kids were really excited about that. So that's something that they just finished. And now we're working on each student has to choose a tribe that lived in Michigan, and because that's where we're at in Michigan history. And now they're going to have to create a research project about that. And they also create one of the dwellings that they lived in history, and they bring in that dwelling. And then they have this research project that they do. And it used to be paper and pencil, but they have the option now whether they want to create that in paper and pencil, or if they want to use a digital medium to create their final project for their research project in. And so some students will use Google Slides, some students will use Book Creator, some students might choose to use Show Me or Educreations on their iPads to create this digital project to get all of their research information together to talk about how the tribes lived, what their language was, what children did when they were younger, and they put all that together, and then we share that with the second graders so that way they can kind of see what they'll be looking at when they come up into third grade next year, and then that sits next to their dwelling. So that's the next piece that we're working on in our classroom.
That all sounds awesome. I want to pick your brain a little bit more, and Jeff, feel free to jump in too. But as I was listening to you explain the project with your animals and using Book Creator, what did that look like before? What did that look like without technology? And then maybe give us a sense of how do you think that changes it, or how does that impact that project?
Sure. Before, I've only been in third grade this is my third year. So in the year before that, I taught kindergarten. And so before I believe what they did is they found pictures of animals in magazines, or they'd used the resources from the units from Oakland, and they had taken the pictures there, and they just cut them out and glued them into a book or maybe a science interactive notebook. The year that I started in third grade is the year that we had iPads. So I said, hey, we could take this and make it digital. Why don't we try it that way? And so that's the year we started with it, and we've just kind of run with it. So I'm not exactly sure how they did it beforehand, but I'm pretty sure that it looked something like that. The kids, they really enjoy being able to go and use the device to be able to access these real life photos of all of these different animals and to put them into something and make it their own. And each book is different for each student, and it really is a piece that they are creating, that they have ownership of. And I think that's what makes it unique for them. Whereas before, it's everyone got the same picture and everybody cut it out and everybody glued it on the paper and they all had the same thing. And now it's something that every student has that's unique to them. And they are able to change the font and they make the background their own, and it's just uniquely theirs. And even my students that struggle with using technology, because we think about the fact that these children, they're digital natives, they should just be able to come in and just pick up this device and use it. Well, that's not necessarily the case. There are children that struggle with this, and so we go through and I can modify this for them, and they may not be able to do everything that all of the students are able to do, but they can still make it their own, and they're excited about what they're doing, and then I can push my higher learners to add in more pieces or add in more information, and it just excites all of my learners, and they really love what they're doing. So I think it's really up to the game on what they were doing before, and it makes them excited about what they're doing.
Sandy, I think the big word that you're talking about right now and the big theme is choice,
yes.
Right? Like student choice in learning and demonstrating their learning. Early on in the conversation, you talked about, deciding between, we're going to do this paper and pencil, we're going to use Show Me. How are you going to demonstrate your learning? And it seems like really wide open. What's the coaching process with kids through that? Like, how do you help them to make decisions? What kind of scaffolds do you put in place that empower them to make a choice in how they demonstrate their learning, but yet kind of keep them on the rails so that they don't kind of drown in the decision making details?
Right. Well, I start out the year and I demonstrate the apps that we have, and the nice thing with having the iPads throughout the building is that that the other teachers have used similar apps with them. And so most of my students have seen these apps before, and most of the teachers have received training from myself or other people within their grade level on how to use these apps. And so hopefully, or usually, there is common language. And so these students have seen this and they should have some experience. And if not, I start at the beginning of the year and I show them the different apps, and they've had some experience with each of these apps. And so by the time we get to the point where we're using the apps that we're getting to these projects anyway, they've had experience with them in order to be able to make an educated decision about what app am I feeling the most confident in using to be able to show my learning here to the best of my ability, and making that choice. Which one am I going to feel most confident in being able to do this with? And then I go ahead and I walk around the room, and I'm just the facilitator there. I'm just their guide, and I just see where they're at, and then I can go ahead and have those important conversations with them and say, how are we doing? Is this really the best choice for you here? Is this something that maybe we need to stop and rethink? I know that maybe this app might not be the best choice for you, or maybe it's more along the lines of, I've seen you use this other app and you have done really well with it. Maybe that might be a better choice. What do you feel about that? And so it's just knowing your students and their strengths as well, but then also, letting them have that say, and them knowing themselves as learners as well, I think is very important.
Sandy, I think you're really pulling out a piece that you mentioned before too, this concept of our students being digital natives. And yes, my 2-year-old can, navigate through apps, as can my 5-year-old, but there's that big distinction between consumption and creation. So it sounds like you're really tackling that head on, and this idea that they might be digital natives in the sense that they're good problem solvers with technology, and once they have a little exposure, they seem to pick up on it quickly, but that we can't just assume that they'll know exactly what to do because they've grown up with iPhones in their hand or things like that too.
Right. Yes, there's a a huge difference. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that, especially people that aren't, you know, I guess tech savvy is the word that I come to, or aren't immersed in the tech world. I spend a lot of my free time reading articles and digging for these things because that's part of my passion. And then I bring that to our staff and I present it, at conferences, and I share that with people because I'm passionate about that. And that's, creation is very different from consumption, and our students need to understand how to create with technology. Anybody can consume technology. It's how can I create something using the technology that's out there, and so that's where these apps like Show Me or Google Docs or anything, Drive, anything in Drive, your sheets, your slides. We use Educreations. We, like I said, Show Me. We're using Book Creator. There's so many things out there on the iPad to do that we're doing in my classroom there. But to have them create something that they're going to be doing that, in the future in their jobs, they're going to be creating more than consuming. And so those are important skills for them to understand how to do. And it starts now, it starts, young. So it's important to teach them how to do that.
That's awesome. I have another question. So you and Jeff were talking about choice earlier. What do you find in terms of when you give students choice, right? And Jeff kind of already picked your brain about what does that look like and how do they choose? But also, what do you find between how many students are choosing paper pencil and then how many students are choosing the device? Does it ever surprise you?
It is interesting because I have more students would rather do paper pencil than I would think they would. So I'm automatically like, yeah, I'm going to take the device because that's just me, I'm like, I can do so much with it. But it just depends on and how they've been taught before, and then I can tell where their comfort level is with the technology, and then where they've also been in our building with the teacher comfort level too. I always advocate and say it's okay to learn from your students, and they're not afraid to break it. And I tell the teachers all the time, I'm like, you're not going to break it. It's okay to jump in and let the chaos happen and see, from the chaos is where you're gonna learn, I guess. It's not always pretty, and the first time you try something, it's never exactly what you pictured it's going to be, but that's how the learning happens. And so some people are very comfortable with that and other people aren't, and I understand that. And so you can tell who is okay with jumping in like that and who has done a lot of experiencing, students have had a lot of experience with that in their classrooms. And then the other students who are in the more controlled classrooms, because those are the students that have come to me and are like, oh, I'm probably going to just try this paper pencil and then not necessarily go with the device. And then other students are like, I'm going to do the device. And then if it doesn't work, they step back and they're like, I think I might just actually do the paper pencil instead, or you're pleasantly surprised because then they are able to do the whole problem solving piece and be like, this didn't exactly turn out the way that I thought it was going to, but I'm going to keep trying it and I'm going to be able to, to fix this problem that I've kind of created with my project. And so it's interesting to see the whole process and how it works with their heads and the choices that they make. I love giving them choice because I have the inclusion room this year. So I have a wide range of learners and needs. And it's just amazing to me what this device that I give them enables them to do. And so, now granted, I don't have a whole lot of paper pencil choices, but it's interesting to see the individual in that choice process, so it's interesting to be able to see too, the background where they come from. So, but I love also seeing, as when I step back and I look at all of this from my coaching piece too, and you can see the choices that are made inside of our building and how that affects our students as learners. And I'm pleasantly surprised because I'm seeing more and more teachers coming along on the boat as well. It's a slow process, but it's happening. And I actually had a staff member, come up to me not that long ago, and he said, you know, I tried something the other day and I had it all planned out in my head and it was going to be great. And I started with this class and it totally fell apart. But my next class came in and it was so much better. So I'm like, good for you. Good for sticking with it. So, it's happening and it's spreading, and it's so good for our kids and our students to have that choice and that in their learning. So,
Sandy, something that you talked about was opportunity.
mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of what your work entails is helping teachers be comfortable with playing, right? Like play with the technology, discover for yourselves what this enables. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of importance in helping to grow the mindset towards technology integration. And being comfortable is an important kind of foundation for being able to make that shift. You started to tease out a little bit about the opportunity that this affords. So when we start looking at, the choice between paper and pencil, and we look at the choice of some of these technology integrations, I'm interested in how you look at integrating technology strategically. How do you see teachers using technology that enables them to afford learning opportunities to their students that might not otherwise have been possible?
Sure. It started obviously with the devices, and it was kind of, this big initiative, and like, oh, all these things are coming and they're taking away our desktops, and they're giving us these iPads, and they're taking away our teacher desktops, and they're giving us these laptops because all of our teachers have MacBook Pros, and what are we going to do? And
Sandy, I think I lived through that same thing in my last district. Like they're taking my computer, but it's just your computer. You'll still have your files. It's all good.
Exactly. And then it was like, and what do we do? What do we do with this? And then it was all about these apps, and okay, what apps do we need? What apps? And it's, and then you get this, it's more than just apps. But you start with, that's the starting point. What can this app do to change my student's life, and their learning? And like you said, what opportunity, what chance for discovery can this, I like that word, that discovery word that you said. And I always told my students, I understand it as play, but I always told my students, we're learning. I didn't want them ever to go home and be a millage. We actually were able to get, so we had the millage pass or bond for our technology. And I didn't want them to ever go home and say, oh, well, we have the bond for technology. We're just playing all day, on our devices. And so I said, we're not playing. We're using this as a tool for learning. And so, but I like that word discovery. I think I'm going to use that some more. We're using this to discover. But it starts with the teachers and changing this, because I think a lot of them in their head were like, oh, we're getting iPads and they're just going to sit and play all day. And so I always told them, I said, it's not about playing. It's about using this as a tool for learning. And so these are some apps that can change the way you teach, or can be in addition to what you're teaching, and can help modify, how your students are learning and reach of course, it starts, always, I think, for our district anyway, it started with those struggling learners, the children that you really, you have a hard time reaching, you need to do some remediation and things. But it also works the same with the staff. You got to pull along those reluctant learners, and so you start that way with your professional development and then pulling those people in. And so we're not taking away the things that you need. We're just replacing them with this piece that's going to help, change your teaching just a little bit. And so it started with a small group in the elementary with our iPad teachers. Here's one app at a time we're going to focus on. How can we change, how can we look at this and be intentional in what we're doing? So we looked at Socrative is one of the first ones we looked at. How can we integrate Socrative in our lessons and be intentional about what we're doing, so we're not just throwing these games at them and just having them playing all day? So we had this group that would meet once a month, and we would look at Socrative and how can we, add this to what we're doing. And it actually went very, very well. And then we're like, okay, what's the next step we would like to explore that can be intentionally integrated into our curriculum and be a piece that works well with what we're doing, so that it's not just something extra. As teachers, we don't want, and here's something else you have to do. So it was just started slow like that. You just have to do one step at a time. Here's one thing that we're going to do that we can merge into what we're doing that can make our lives easier, so that it's not just another thing to do. And so I started with our groups like that. And I think that helped with our staff and being like, it's not another piece. It's a way that we can change our teaching and make our lives easier, but not just our lives. This is also making our students' lives easier too. And this is how we're giving our students a way and a choice. And so this is our fourth year. The first one was K, first and fourth. So those iPads were sold off last summer, and they got the updated iPads now. And then this next summer, it'll be second, third, and I believe that's it, second and third, that those iPads will be updated. And so then we'll all have the next generation of iPads, and everybody will have been through it for 4 years. And so I'm seeing a lot of growth in our students, and I'm seeing a lot of growth in our teachers in offering the options and the choices and the opportunity for advanced learning to our students. And it's just amazing. It's just amazing what kids are able to do and what our staff is willing to do. They're just great people, no matter what level of comfort that they're at, so I hope that answered your question.
It did. It uncovered another one for me though. It almost sounds like you had these app focused focus groups, really, like to have these conversations. I'm like deeply interested in kind of the nuts and bolts of what that conversation would look like, because I think it's important to have those conversations around like let's pull this thing apart and let's identify opportunities in the way that teaching and learning can be enhanced by utilizing this. So you threw Socrative out there.
Yeah.
Can you remember some of the takeaways? Like what was conversation like in that setting over the application of Socrative?
Oh goodness, you're asking me to go back.
Yeah, I am. Or it could be a more recent one. It's Sandy. Let me be transparent about my intentions.
Yeah, sure.
I think that like teacher discussion and teacher decision making around like an app is deeply interesting, because I think that that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where we take you should use this tool because it's good to this is why we want to use this tool for formative assessments, because of the data dashboard that we can see what student learning is like, and it can inform our decision making the next day because of this, right? So I imagine that conversations were similar to that, but I just would love if you've got any like nuggets of like really cool conversation that came about because of those focus groups.
Right. Well, it was basically like what you just said. I mean, they liked the real time responses. They could see what the students were saying. They liked that they had access to all of those things right then and there, and that was why people had buy-in for it, and they stuck with it. We used it for a couple of, we had discussion and we had group around that for a couple of months, at least that I can remember. So I was teaching kindergarten when we used that, so it was 4 years ago. So it's been a while, but it was, and I was just to mention at that time, I was going through the TRIG training at that time, and was the TRIG coach then. So that was just before I started my my district and instructional integration coaching there. So because that's how I got into being our district coach, was through the TRIG program. Once I was trained through that, then that's how I was able to be our district technology integration coach, was through the TRIG program and the training through that. But that's how, through that training, I said, hey, maybe this is a good way to approach that. And then also it was through collaboration with Boyne, where Erin was, and meeting with them and the ladies in the elementary there, and talking with them and about their iPad program, because we went and visited their school, their elementary, and as we were entering into our iPad pilot and our program there, and just seeing what they were doing. And then we just thought, we have to have a plan for how we're going to do this. We can't go willy-nilly and purchasing all of these apps and then spending all this money and then having them not be effective. And so Socrative was free, and we thought, like you said, there needs to be while we can, discover and we can approach this, there needs to be, we need to be intentional about how we're going to integrate it into what we're doing. And so we wanted to have a focus group, basically, of about what is working, and something that we could have collaboratively across all grade levels. And so that one was the first one. And after that, the year after that, we decided we have a delayed start. We call it, we're the Ramblers. And so we call it the Rambler time. And we have that once a month. And then I was doing 45 minutes of professional development for our elementary and middle school staff every Rambler time. And so instead of having the focus group, then I was bringing web tools, because our middle school was MacBooks. And so I was bringing iPad and web tools to our staff at that time. So then our focus group kind of dissolved, because I was bringing information to them and then asking them to go back. And then we were having discussions at the next Rambler time as an entire staff. So, but at that first year, because that was our first year with the iPads in first and fourth grade and in kindergarten. And so those grades met, and we just talked about how Socrative at that time was. And that was really the big thing, was how the dashboard worked. They liked that they could get that immediate feedback. Students were engaged. They could see what they were doing. And those were very important things at the time when we were using that. Those are discussion pieces that I remember. So
cool. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Sandy, I think that you lifted out a lot of really cool things about when it comes to a district initiative or a district implementation. I had one of my ed tech professors for my master's was like, let's stop calling it an initiative, right? It's not an initiative. This is something that we need to implement. And I'm like, oh, he's so right. So I always hesitate to call it that. But I feel like you guys were very thoughtful in terms of how you approached that, where you did the site visits, you thought about supporting teachers, you had a plan, there's an instructional tech coach. And it just seems like in a lot of districts, there are the pieces of those that get overlooked.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? The other question that keeps coming up for me, so you teach in McBain, which is near and dear to my heart. I used to spend a week there every summer. That's where my great-grandmother lived, and I have such fond memories of walking downtown. My godmother lives there. I have a lot of family, but for those people that don't know McBain, I mean, would it be safe to say it's a pretty small rural farming
Absolutely.
community?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So when you think about, earlier we were talking about discovery and opportunities. I know that people are like, how does it drive student learning? What does it look like there? But sometimes I feel like there's such a bigger piece too about collaborating on a much larger scale than just your, we used to call it like the Boyne City bubble or the Petoskey bubble. So how do you feel like, having that access to technology can broaden your students, maybe their horizons, their exposure, just help them to become a little bit more global than what they might be otherwise?
So, the awesome thing about technology is that you can connect to classrooms across the state or around the country or around the world. And so when I taught kindergarten, I was able to use, I didn't use my iPads because they're so little and they don't need to be connecting on their iPads individually, but I did Skype in the classroom. We did mystery Skype, and which looks very different than a mystery Skype in third grade would look, which looks very different than a mystery Skype in, a middle school or high school classroom would look. And, but we did mystery Skype with a classroom in Pennsylvania, and, we would read books to each other. So we'd talk a little bit about where our place in the world was, which they didn't exactly understand all that, but we'd talk about what are some important pieces of our community, or, and then we would share that. And then we would do, we'd read a story to one another using our teacher computers and our webcams, and we'd share our classroom with one another and see what that looked like. And their students there wore uniforms and my students didn't. And they were an inner city school and my students were a rural school. And so connecting those pieces, they're not seeing the rural piece and my students aren't seeing the inner city school. And so it knocked down those walls, just sharing that. And so my students are actually this year going to be doing some collaborative writing with students in East Point in Michigan. And last year, my students did pen pal writing with some students in Washington State. And so that's the awesome thing about these devices, is that they can connect kids across the country, around the world. I haven't done an actual global one yet, but that's one of my my things that I'd like to do, is to connect to somebody around the world eventually. I've had authors come in and read to my kids through the devices, and we've done some things with, and when I taught, I did some long-term subs before I got my own classroom. And that was back before we were one-to-one. So, but we did, and that was all in McBain as well. I've been there a long time before I actually had my own classroom, but we did, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but something along the lines of like a mystery, like Google Earth. And so we did like a Google Earth tour with mystery points on that. And I know that they've come a long way and they do even cooler things with it now. And so they're like mystery Google Earth tours. And so I did those with my second graders around President's Day. And so it opens up their world and it knocks down the walls and it shows them places that they may never ever go. And it just brings things to them that they may never experience. And it's amazing. So, and it connects them to people and places that help to bring cultures and communities to them that they may never see. So it broadens their horizons in many ways.
That's so powerful too, because I've been in a similar role where you're a full-time teacher and then you're a tech coach for your district too. How do you find balance? How do you choose what you're going to do and what you're going to explore? And I mean, how do you make those choices when I know that your schedule is probably very crazy?
Very difficult. So this is my passion. And so teaching is my passion and technology is my passion. And so I spend a lot of my personal time doing this. And then, so it's just difficult. So I, as a technology integration coach, it's, on the side. And so I'm not doing Rambler times this year like I had done before. And I didn't last year as well. Last year was the first year. So I actually have open door times. And I do what's called Tech Tuesdays. And so I hold that open for our staff and I stay after school for about an hour, hour and a half. And I have open door times to help staff with any technology questions they may have. And so I spend time after school. I've had people call me and ask me to come into their classrooms and help them with a lesson. And so I don't know that it's right, but the nice thing about having my kids work on projects on an iPad is that it's mobile. And so I will have my kids working on their projects, and I will bring them into a classroom, and they sit along the back of the room working on their projects on their device while I help a teacher facilitate their lesson. And it's a very difficult line to walk. So in all honesty, it almost needs to be one or the other. But I love both of them so much. I don't know that I could choose one or the other. So it's just I don't know that I have a balance. It's something, as all teachers do. You bring home your work and you bring home your passions with you. And I do my research at home and on the weekends and over Christmas break. So it was very easy, to talk about it today because yesterday afternoon I spent time. I also, out of the goodness of my heart, run a coding club at school, and I didn't start it at the beginning of this year just because starting off the year was crazy, but I plan on starting coding club up again after Christmas break. And I just found that the Dot and Dash Wonder Workshop has a robotics club competition. And we have a robotics club in our high school. My son participates in that. And I would love to bring something like that to my elementary school. So I'm looking into that right now, and I'll probably spend most of Christmas break actually looking into how to get that into my elementary school. So I don't know that I ever really shut it off. And that's difficult. So I don't know that I'm a good one to talk about balance because I have a very hard time making everything balance out. So
I feel like the term balance is just a constant finding balance, right? It's never like, I read a book one time where this woman's like, if it looks like I'm really showing up here, I'm probably not completely showing up elsewhere. I think that's a constant struggle, right? Especially in education.
I like that. I think that's going to become my mantra or my theme right there.
Right.
Yeah, there's nuance to that, right? Like, I don't think that we could ever say that teachers have more time in their day to do other things, but yet they do.
Exactly.
And so, like, to me, like, balance isn't so much about how you, like, timeshare between those things or how you find, you carve out, like, downtime for yourself. It's more about how you keep trucking along and taking on new endeavors and things like that. So
exactly.
Yeah, I like what you said there, Aaron, where it's like balance is more of a mindset than it actually is like a task management skill.
Exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I'm very lucky. My son is 15. And so I stayed at home when he was little. And so I came to teaching a little bit later. And that's why there was so much time subbing and doing those things. And I went to school when he got into elementary school. This is a kind of like a second career for me. And so now he's not as interested in spending so much time with me. He's got his own things going on. So I'm able to dedicate myself more to the things that I love. It all kind of works out, but that's not the case for everyone, as like for you with your little ones, Aaron, and for many other people I see at school that, my colleagues that have small children, and it's not as easy for them. So it's constantly evolving, mm-hmm. right? In those days where this could be a motherhood, a parenthood podcast now, Jeff, but Jeff has a little guy too. Griffin just turned one last week, right?
Last week.
So that idea of a child not wanting to be at your side or needing you all the time is like, oh, maybe that'll be nice. But at the same time, I'm sure you miss all the little things too.
Yes. But it'll come for both of you faster than you think.
I know.
I'm trying not to wish for it.
Sandy. Yes. Sandy, in the interest of letting you spend that time and letting you have that downtime for your Christmas, we just want to thank you for taking time out of your day, for sharing with us. I think you've got a lot of really great things that are going on in McBain, especially in regards to that technology. And I know that a lot of that is because of the hard work that you're putting in. So thank you for taking time out for us today.
Thank you both for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been fun, and I really enjoy sharing. So thank you.
Shall we play a game?
Noise you couldn't quite locate or explain. Noise you couldn't quite locate or explain.
All right.
So how you feel about trivia time?
I'm a little nervous. I don't want to
Yeah.
get any wrong. But let's do it.
Okay.
Trivia
some
Quizmaster
time.
General Jeff, I am ready.
Okay. Hey, and I didn't have a better, we got to come up with a better name, because I was writing this down, and I said, Jeff is going to play the Quizmaster, and Quizmaster General sounds even like more official. But then I just got comma, Aaron contestant. It's kind of like, that's kind of like super lame in comparison. We got to, maybe if we don't come up with one right now, we got to come up with a better name.
All right.
Something with victim in the title would be probably
Okay,
appropriate.
now I'm not so sure if I'm ready.
So what I did for this little bit to have some fun, I went on Quizlet, and for those that don't know, a quick overview of what Quizlet is. Think online flashcards with added features.
Lots of added features, right?
Lots of added features.
I feel like 5-6 years ago, they were cool online flashcards, and now they've just really upped their game.
Yeah. So I learned something trying to find this quiz, and it's the history of education in America, but it's really biased. It's like colonial era, and then like most of these questions end before the 1900s.
I was really holding on to like the fact that I knew about Horace Mann, but now
I don't know.
Feeling like that might not be valuable.
Horace Mann was in here. I wonder if I cut it. So what I did was I found this quiz that someone else did, this Quizlet, and I copied it. I do have one question in here that I'll see if you can see which question I wrote. How about that, Aaron?
Okay.
Okay. So the first question, what was a normal school? It's like official term.
Okay.
Is it A, the same as our high schools today? B, a school to prepare teachers? C, a specifically religious school? Or D, a school for poor children?
Okay, I know it's not C or D, but I'm going, I think it was B. I think it was a school for teachers, but I also feel like it was kind of like a high school level thing to prepare students for like college or something like that. But I'm going to go with B.
Final answer?
Yes.
Yeah. You hear my that's right. That's my coffee cup and phone together for right answer. Yeah. It's a school to prepare teachers. It was not necessary to attend a normal school. But it was at the time that they were coming out, it was being pushed. I might have given away part of the next question.
All right.
We'll go to
That's
it.
okay.
The next question is, to be a teacher in colonial America, you had to A, have a college degree, B, simply convince the town that you could do it, C, have your own children, or D, get a teacher certification.
Why?
Through MOAX.
Okay, so yeah, from MOAX, and have your certification logged in the site and complete sketches so it does not expire, right? Okay, well, I know it's not that. I know that they didn't have to have their own children. I'm like dating it back to my Laura Ingalls Wilder education on an old school education. I feel like they really just had to convince the town that they could do it.
Good job.
I feel like you need a different you need a sound effect app on your phone or something.
I'll replay. Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'll download that. Give me a second here.
All right. What do I win if I get them all right?
What do you want to win? Hold on while I install this app. Oh, it's installed.
That was fast.
Yeah, it's not a big app. Is this good then?
Super obnoxious. I love it.
That'll work. All right. We'll do 2 more, right?
All right.
Okay. So you want a difficult one?
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. Let's see. This is a little bit more rigorous. We're heading up Bloom's Pyramid. Not really though. This is all recall. Which writer most famously championed women becoming teachers? A. Thomas Jefferson. B. William A. Murphy. C. Susan B. Anthony. Or D. Catherine Beecher.
That's a good question. I really have no idea, so I'm just going to take a guess of C.
I just downloaded this ham horn and now I gotta find a sound for incorrect answers or something like. Oh, here.
Oh, here. Wah, wah.
That works, right?
It does. What was the correct answer?
Catherine Beecher.
All
So
right.
do you know much about Catherine Beecher?
I do not.
Well, let me expound on
Enlighten
it
me.
because I read her Wikipedia article. So, Miss
So it's
Beecher.
pretty reliable.
So it was kind of interesting to me because the nature of this question kind of seems like she's a champion for women's rights, right? Like equality. But it was really, she was the opposite of that. She felt that women and men were created for very specific reasons and that they had very different skill sets based upon their sex. And they've really, her advocating for women to become teachers stemmed from her belief that it was an extension of their domestic role.
Oh, I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I found this incredibly interesting. So, I did this research on top of this Quizlet quiz that I just saw. The context wasn't in there.
Right.
But she considered women to be natural teachers.
I mean, I feel like that's nice and everything, but I don't love her logic behind these things.
Yeah, history's a mixed bag, right?
It sure is.
Anyway, last question. We're
Last question.
not quite at the top of Bloom's Pyramid. I don't know where we're at in Bloom's Pyramid, but
I think we're on straight up guessing.
true or
at this
false
point.
question. A hot dog is a sandwich.
Well, for one, this would be the question that you threw in there. And two, in terms of the correct answer, I don't believe there is one. I think you could argue.
What would you
either way.
say, though?
I feel like I have to go with true. When you're thinking about the confines of a sandwich, you need bread. It could have the ability to have toppings, meat. So a hot dog technically could fit into that description.
How come it has its own section sometimes, though? On the menus, it has its own section. Yeah,
it's on the kids menu. I don't know that it's on its own section.
I don't know how I ate hot dogs normally as a kid was chopped up in mac and cheese. So to me, it's a sausage, not a. it's a meat, not a necessarily the sandwich itself.
False.
But
Is there
No,
is there a
you know, I
correct
asked
answer to that question?
I like using that
Okay.
question as an icebreaker for sessions and stuff. It gets people talking. There's some pretty strong sandwich advocates out there, and I think so much so that I'm convinced that a hot dog is a sandwich. Because I think the strongest argument to me is that sandwiches are all about convenience and bread as delivery tool, right? So anytime that you're utilizing bread as a delivery tool to make a meal portable, it's a sandwich. Because, like, really, the hot dog meat itself is what you're after. The bread is just kind of there, right? Unless it's like some super artisan stuff, but why would you put super artisan bread around a hot dog?
With a hot dog.
So, but I think I'm sandwich person. I think I'm a sandwich person.
Jeff, I feel like this has some classroom application in terms of teaching students how to debate, but having to support
Absolutely.
their position, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that they can all access pretty easily.
That's the big reason why I find it so good for an icebreaker. And you're right. Like, if we're talking about teaching debate skills, and it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong, that's what you use as evidence.
Right.
You're right. It's a really good question to kind of prompt that. Like, I remember political science classes where my first year teaching, I had a long-term sub position with an AP Poli-Sci class. And so, yeah, it was kind of like, yeah, it is a tall order.
That's a tall order.
And some of the subject matter, it was like we would look at Roe v. Wade. So, like, if you're going to have conversations with sensitive subject matter, you know, starting with is a hot dog a sandwich is probably a little low stakes way of kind of building up your rapport with, you know, as a group, like building that trusting culture. It's tough for anyone. I mean, look at our political climate today, but yet alone young people to separate, like, you know, civil discourse from, like, their passions and feelings, and
To disagree without being disagreeable, right?
right, exactly. Or someone out there try it out. Yeah, let us know how it goes. Let us know which kids you like best. The pro sandwich folks or not a sandwich folks. Who argues their point better? Who's most civil in doing it?
Hello there. Today, we want to talk to you about asking questions, because asking questions is a good way to find out about things, like go gaze, observe.
So all this talk about hot dogs makes me think about campfires, because that's really that's probably about the only way I would eat a hot dog, is if it's cooked over a campfire. There's just something kind of nostalgic about that. But it also kind of leads me into our next little segment, which is our campfire question. And Twitter is just blowing up with questions for us. And by blowing up, I mean no one's asked us a question yet. So what we did was we asked the rest of our blended learning team, what are questions or misconceptions that you hear regularly about blended learning? Because it is, we kind of talked about this in the last episode, that it's kind of this nebulous, vague concept that a gentleman asked me one time at a professional development, I don't know, I didn't bring my blender with me. And I was like, oh, yeah, not that. But anyway, one of the things that they said they heard on the regular was, oh, so when you're doing blended learning, everything happens online, right? And I think our immediate reaction to that is like, no, that's not what happens. So if somebody asked you that question, Jeff, what would you say? How would you put them at ease?
I could see where you could jump to that point. I think that the black and white is like this, like traditional face-to-face learning versus this online learning, but like we like to think of it as a continuum between the two, not a night and day choice. And I think that one of the biggest things to mention is that when you're looking at the continuum between mostly online versus mostly face-to-face, I think most classrooms are closer to that mostly face-to-face side and are still considered blended classrooms. I think that the key thing, and we talked about it on our first podcast when we were defining blended learning, is it's all about strategy. It's how you're using those online spaces, those digital spaces, not necessarily how much your class, your content delivery, your student interactions, their activities that they're completing. It's not so much how much is living in that online space versus living in that the face-to-face space. It's how strategically the two come together. So that's how I approach it. How do you kind of start to unpack that?
I think you're right when you talk about it's like this kind of beautiful marriage between what works really well face to face and then what works really well online. And I don't even think that I was just thinking about the term online, right? That's maybe not accurate either, because when we look at first or second graders, can they have blended learning experiences, or can there be blended classrooms at those grade levels? Yes, absolutely. But it's not like we're sending them out, on the internet to find all this content, right? So it's kind of what you said too, thinking about how to be strategic about it. How are we going to house it so they can easily access what they need so that it's a kind of a beneficial use of that time too. But also, I think a big fear that a lot of people have is what happens to the teacher in this scenario, and is the teacher really needed? And I think the resounding answer from us is yes, absolutely, that it's the teacher's job to figure out where our students at and to figure out what would be best for those students. And that when they provide some experiences that maybe can be done online or, on an app or I don't know, whatever, in a learning management system, and that kind of frees up the teacher to have other more in-depth work time with smaller groups of students throughout their class time or throughout the day, then that makes the teacher's role, even more valuable, but hopefully allows their knowledge and their ability to teach the students to be even more far-reaching too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What she said.
So that being said too, if you do have a question for us or a topic that you'd like to hear us chit chat about, we would love for you to reach out to us on social media. You can do it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We will put our Snapchat handles in. Are they called handles? Usernames? I don't know what they're called on Snapchat.
Handles is like ham radio stuff. So I love saying that it's handles, like our call signs or something.
It's
like
like
that.
a mesh of old and new technology. But anyway,
that's where we live. That's at the intersection.
Yes.
Old and new.
Yes. So we'd love to hear your questions. Otherwise, we're just going to keep coming up with questions of our own that we can answer really easily.
We'll send you a pack of hot dogs if you send a question in to us. Let us know if you want ballpark franks or Kogels.
Maybe some other swag too that we don't have to be concerned about getting moldy and disgusting in the mail.
You can make the choice. Let us know if you want hot dogs or swag.
Right. It's up to you.
And with that, remember to check out our show notes for more information on what we talked about.
Maybe we can get a picture of you Wonder Womaning. Wonder Womaning? I don't know if that's
yes, a word. I will snap that to you afterwards. I think I'm going to need someone to help me out with that in order to.
Perfect.
I need both hands for firmly affixed to my hips for that pose to come through. But yeah, we'll get that up there too. If you've already listened to us so far and you've been keeping up to date, you're doing a good job. Keep at it. If not, if this is your first time hearing us, you can subscribe wherever you can subscribe to podcasts. I guarantee it. So use your favorite podcatcher. If you're an iTunes person, leave us a review in iTunes. That helps us out. And other
maybe
than that,
even share it with somebody you think might enjoy it too.
Yeah, do that.
Or somebody that wants to debate with us about our hot dogs sandwiches.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like I'm about to get blown away up here. It is so windy and snowy and cold. So, with that, a hot dog is a sandwich. Peace out.